Hi there, Roger.
Good evening. How's things?
Not too bad, thank you. Yourself? Just a friendly reminder, this is being recorded and will go on YouTube.
Yes. It's all good.
Good. Good. Hey, Zach.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Should pull up the agenda, see what we've got to talk about today.
The agenda was merged. It feels very official.
Yeah. We should. Martin Atkins raised a really good point on the PR for the agenda about where we should organize things and how we should do it. Should it be a different repo? I think we can discuss that later. I don't think it needs to be discussed today.
I heard from RL that he will likely not be showing up to this one.
Okay. Would somebody else like to take notes today? I took a lot of notes last time.
I would normally volunteer, but I probably need to duck out a little bit early today.
I'm happy to volunteer. What is the right mechanism for that nowadays? Is it still a Google Doc which will get copy pasted afterwards, or do I do it live and get home?
It is completely up to you on whatever works best. As long as a pull request ends up in the repo, it doesn't matter. So last week I did it in Google Doc, and then I think I manually converted it to Markdown. But it's completely up to you about how you want to do this. We should maybe come up with a mechanism for this. But,
yeah. And for the time being, the strategy is the Markdown will end up in that agenda file.
In notes file separately.
Yeah, there'll be a notes file that's dated.
Yep. But
I see that. Okay.
We don't have to do it that way. I just so the goal behind this, and this is one of the things I wanted to talk about in the meeting, which is relatively low importance, but my initial thoughts behind this structure was that we would create the agenda when we finish the notes for the previous meeting and get those committed. That way, throughout the week, people from the community could add items to the agenda as they see fit. So, Igor.
Hey guys.
But I do kind of agree that we should think about, and we can go away and think about it and discuss it another time because it's not on the agenda today. But we should think about how can we reduce noise on the main repo with PRs and
We do.
By the way, on the governance docs and TSC, when I investigated this maybe a year ago, there are a whole bunch of CNCF projects that have a separate repo called governance, and they just put everything there.
Yeah. I think we were 50-50. I think we just flipped a coin and said, yeah, put it in the repo. It's already there and existing. So
I did, since the last time we meet, it no longer runs all of the check and build the code actions for random markdown files in the repo. So it does remove some of the, why did this random test fail while I was adding notes to the meeting?
it's a double M on Sims for Roger. Oh, it is double M there. Sorry, I'm going crazy.
Double M will be the install.
Zach can fix typos later and we can review the PR.
Yep.
I mean, who did I get wrong?
Ilya is double L. But yeah. Sure. Thanks.
Sorry about that.
Well, I mean, do we want to make an action on the moving to a new repo for TSC notes?
Yeah. Let's just make a decision on it. Do we need to vote? Is this, we can just consensus this? It sounds like making a governance repo is standard operating procedure for CNCF projects. So follow that model.
Yeah.
Going once, going twice. Sold.
If only everything was as easy as that.
Possibly the fastest vote we've ever had.
Is that Christian? Is that on you?
James, can I put that on you?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Put it on me.
Okay.
Either one's fine. All right. Update on action items from the last week. Maybe we can go through the list. I think I tried to write action items pretty clearly when we got some things. So yeah, let's talk about CNCF onboarding first, because that one is on me. Hi there, Troy. Just a friendly reminder, this is being recorded and will end up on YouTube. So the CNCF migration, we are blocked on the final step of migrating our Slack server. And one of the things that we discussed last week, and there's an action plan within the notes, is about providing our current Slack with like a deadline of when we want people to migrate across. But I am blocked on coordination with the CNCF. I have had a service desk ticket open now for about 6 weeks. And I wanted to just double check, hey, if we go and tell our community that we are migrating over to the CNCF Slack, that we will have everything in place for you guys to import it. And they went silent. And then I escalated the ticket. And then they went silent. And I escalated the ticket again until this morning when I got a reply saying that they are working on it and coming up with a plan and they appreciate my patience.
This is the CNCF or it's Slack? That's
The CNCF.
Okay.
I assume with all of the reordering of tags and everything else going on right now that things are a little bit slow at CNCF, bureaucracy et al. And so, yeah, that's where we're at. Igor.
I have a proposal. I mean, like technically what CNCF will do probably is just like put a bunch of emails of existing users into like import and then send the invites. Which pretty much saves like, I don't know, like 1 click for the end users. So what we can do is, again, like we can put a deadline on our own Slack channel and then just like let users know that this is where we're migrating, blah, blah, blah. And all the users need to do is like just click on the link and which will be a link to the OpenTofu like CNCF channel, wherever, and then just like sign up there. So in theory, either they click in link from email from like Slack where they've been invited, or from our announcement. I'm not sure that there's a huge difference. So we can in theory remove this dependency and just move on.
So the one thing that might be blocking it, and I've asked them to look into this, is can you import users into an existing channel within Slack? Because the OpenTofu channel already exists within Slack, I don't know fully how that works. And if we have to remove our current existing OpenTofu channel or rename some channels and shuffle things around to do it. And that's why I'm blocked on the CNCF. I'm happy to go and tell everyone to go across to the OpenTofu CNCF channel. But what I don't want then is the CNCF to go and rename it, move it, and we end up with people split all over the place.
But can we just ask CNCF don't touch it? Like we don't do import on anything, and just like there's a channel called OpenTofu. There's not like many options like we can rename it into what, and then just like handle it ourselves.
I think that's an option. I think I would rather personally wait and see if the CNCF can do something in the next week or so and get the migration done properly, but we should have this as a backup plan if the CNCF can't come through. Go ahead, Christian.
We can shoot a pig in the maintainer circle and see if anyone can provide clarity there as well.
Yeah, I can start lighting some fires onto some people and see what we can do.
This is the very last thing on the checklist.
The very last.
And so the urgency is like getting this behind us, I assume.
Yeah.
All right. So the proposal is we give James and the CNCF 1 more week. Otherwise, we do the manual import. We need a vote. We have consensus.
Sounds great.
Go once, going twice. Decision.
Sounds good. All right, other action items from last time.
There was coordination of getting together. Sorry, there's one there first. Christian to write an RFC on the one above.
Of that performance one, that is still an action item for this time. I need to do that.
Okay. Other action items, because there was quite a few. I'm just going to pull it up on my own screen.
Or no, this wasn't getting performance tests from tacos. It was writing an RFC to potentially add a dump profile from OpenTofu for detailed debug information.
Yep. There's another action item above me reaching out to Cooper Martin to write an RFC around unknown inputs. I've spoken to him. He said he's going to see if he has time. Resource identities. I'm still doing a write-up and keeping an eye on what's going on. Ephemeral values. We were to collate a group between Yusef from Gruntworks, myself, Roger, Igor, Martin Atkins. I've had another one of the maintainers who wants to get involved, Dio. I've not organized this. I think the blocker here is maybe just me reaching out to Yusef and figuring out time zones. Unless you know off the top of your head, Zach, what time zone Yusef is in.
Yusuf lives in Washington, D.C. That'd be Eastern time.
Okay. So maybe we can organize something. The action item's still on me to organize this, I believe. Well, it wasn't specifically, we didn't assign a person to organize this. But I'll put it on myself. Why not?
This was ephemeral values?
Well, we wanted to talk big picture because it ended up being a discussion around the future of workspaces.
Right. So I don't think ephemeral values is the right title.
Yeah, do we want to split those 3 items?
Was it one group or 2 groups?
Just one group.
So the banner headline is future workspaces. I mean, in the prior notes, the banner headline is 2.1 ephemeral values, which is what is the source of my confusion.
I think that's wrong. That should have been thought in review, James.
Got it. Okay.
I mean, in general, it's just a large, big picture. What's the future of OpenTofu? But yes.
Yeah, but it's not about ephemeral values. That was just as a buggy now.
Okay. I'll do a full write-up an invitation for this. Unless anybody, sorry, I just realized that I'm getting assigned a lot. Does anyone else want to step up and organize this group, or am I still the best person to do this?
I can take that off your plate.
Okay. Awesome.
And so, if memory serves, this was there's a lot of large scale issues about what is the future of interfacing with OpenTofu for large projects, for workspaces, for this does start getting into stacks a little bit for pluggable backends, but it's getting into some of the larger externally facing architecture decisions that are kind of blocking a lot of large features in our backlog.
I think that's all the action items from last week.
Okay. So this week's items. This guy, I think we've checked off how to manage the agenda notes. We have an action item on that.
Mhm.
That's sort of like not a recap from last week, but like there is agenda items. Work. What's next? CNCF onboarding. Is there any Slack migration? We kind of discussed that, right? Nothing else to do there.
Yep.
Okay. Reworking GitHub groups and org membership. In the future, just a quick point of order, it would be helpful if whoever added the agenda item left their name in the agenda, just so it was clear who added and who owns the conversation.
Yeah, we should do that. Right now, it's just me.
I guess I could look at the git blame, but
Yeah. So OpenTofu membership, I discussed this a little bit last week. We currently have a small team of maintainers. I believe there's 6 maintainers right now, and then there is a technical steering committee, and there's a bit of an overlap. So we have the maintainers plus Zach, Igor, Roger, and Arel. And then I believe that we should remove everybody else from the GitHub org membership. Whoever's paying for the GitHub org, I'm sure we appreciate the cost and value of everything, but I think from a security standpoint and just making maintenance of the GitHub groups and orgs, it would be a lot easier to go and remove this. So I believe we would be removing Sasha Levchenkov and Ronnie Franchi, WST, Yusuf Akbar, and that's it.
I believe Yusuf was at a temporarily for previous TSC meetings for a little bit.
I believe we discussed about having a group of maintainers and a group of TSC. Yep. And I think the groups already exist. I'll have to double check. But,
So,
is anyone opposed to just cleaning it up, making sure only people have access who need to have access?
That makes sense.
sounds good.
I know there's a big picture conversation that maybe Igor we can have later on about if we should go to GitHub Enterprise and see what the CNCF have to offer us in that area as well. But yeah.
A little bit as we're thinking about like who's owners and things, I actually realized I don't even know how are we documenting who is the current voting TSC members.
There is a file in the repo which I believe is in contributing.md. That's where it's documented, as it says our governance.
Then your sidebar if you do want to have a look, Zach.
Yeah, no, I've got it in another window. Sorry. Okay. So the action then is James.
James or myself, one of the two of us.
Yeah.
Can I put a single name? James, you've got a bunch of stuff. Can I put Christian on this one?
Yep. Yeah, I can do that.
Move. We're just going to call them non-essential.
Non-essential, yeah.
Easy enough.
If you guys want, I can just remove them right now and just move on.
Well, we've got to rename the groups and update some reviews and stuff.
Okay.
So.
I think we should probably manage it all with OpenTofu.
Oh, that's what I'm going to do. We've got an info repo where we started putting that stuff anyways. Not a public info repo, just because access and permissions and all that fun stuff.
But managing it by OpenTofu, we can then have approval process on including people as members to certain groups, so no one's sneakily adding people. And
Yep. Hackathon results. So the core team had a fantastic hackathon last week. James, do you want to give an overview? I got really deep down a rabbit hole and kind of disappeared for the end of the week.
Sure, I can give a little bit of an overview. So maybe we should do like a public blog post with some demo videos and things like this, just to go and show things off. That would be fantastic. A lot of the projects were very successful. I would separate them into 3 different categories of what happened. So the core team worked across 3 different types of things. The first group I would say is, okay, actually, background first. We went into the hackathon with the idea that nothing is sacred. You can rip everything apart, and that the goal of the hackathon was to be creative. It's to spark conversation and have ideas, and not to produce production code, RFCs, or anything like this on the back of it. We ended up with 3 different schools of projects, I would say. One was around improving, how would I say this, user feedback when running tofu init, plan and apply, and things like this. So 2 projects that I worked on in this area was a web interface that would visualize your module layout in a node graph, very similar to like Blender node graphs or flows or anything you've seen there, so that you can get an understanding of how your application is stitched together. And then I also worked on a terminal user interface, which allowed you to, it just improved how we do things in the terminal. Instead of there being a large set of scrolling logs, it was an interactive terminal user interface. And I think I realized from the 2 projects that I worked on there that we identified that what we have now is okay. But improving usability for end users who are running it locally on their systems, and improving the ability to work with the code. So not just giving people logs and code or config would be fantastic. Another area that one of the projects that Dio worked on was the ability to output logs and then put machine readable logs in a different place as well. So this again is about that user interface and improving that, but it would help with a lot of automated tooling, be able to get the logs from Tofu and still provide human readable logs to end users without a lot of work. The second category of what we did, how can I put this nicely? Christian, how would you describe yours? Rip everything apart, rip apart the
See what's next. Find a way to deossify OpenTofu. Using a term, I believe the word about borrowed from Martin, but the general idea is the main tofu package is terrifying to touch. I don't think any of the core developers, Martin included, would disagree with that assessment. And a lot of that is it's this beautiful organic garden of interconnected vines and some still relevant, some forgotten ideas. And it makes developing the project dramatically harder. Everything, again, we're building on the shoulders of giants. This, at the time, most of what was added to this package made a lot of sense, but at its current state, the way that OpenTofu's core engine works is very hard for anyone to touch, even someone who's been working on it for years. And I took the approach of, well, if we designed it today, what would it look like? And I designed it today and saw what it would look like. And I'm hoping to, and this is where like a blog post on this would be interesting, but the goal here is to put together an RFC for saying this is where we could take the core of OpenTofu's execution. And I know I'm taking up much time, but long story short, I rewrote it in such a way that it uses lazy evaluation as it executes, which means the code is remarkably straightforward. It is easy to debug, easy to follow. Doesn't rely on 20 different interfaces that need to be implemented in 6 different places for anything to function. And the performance was frankly kind of unbelievable. We have an OpenTofu performance testing repo, and one of the examples there went from 14 minutes down to 13 seconds. And this is just using a provider that creates local files on disk. Not saying there aren't other things that are slow with providers and stuff in OpenTofu, but there's a surprising amount of overhead in the current execution engine that I don't believe is necessary, just because of how it's organically evolved over time, and a lot of these global cross-cutting concerns that don't need to be necessarily. Sorry, I know that was a lot, but I'd like to turn this into an RFC of here's how we can take small changes, small steps in this direction. And I could see us built like the core of OpenTofu in a couple of years looking like this. Again, there's no way that you could refactor the whole program in one go and just release it and say, that's good enough. So taking a much more measured approach, but to well, what happens if we throw away all of our current items? Sorry, Zach, that was a lot of typing.
I think the main takeaway from it is, along with another project that Martin did, which was granular state storage, we want to try and get out from underneath the years of tech debt that have accrued within the project.
Yep.
And this will allow us to, if we want to put the time into it, and we've got to put together some RFCs to justify how much time it's going to be, if we want to put the time into it, how much velocity it gives the maintainers in the future to go and add things. Instead of it taking weeks to go and add a new type of block, it may take a couple of days.
As an example, I was talking to some of the other developers this morning, and someone who was fresh on just hearing a rough description of what I was planning on doing mostly understood what was happening and could probably debug the code after about 15 minutes versus the multi-week onboarding process, at least that is the graph.
There were a couple other projects that I think were noteworthy of mention. Ilya's been doing some investigation. Ilya's with us today, was doing some investigation into being able to create a sandbox environment in which people can learn OpenTofu. So this meant, I think you went down a route of mocking providers and such, and allowing people to learn OpenTofu in a safe way, which is interesting. I implemented the idea of something called middleware, which I'll put up an RFC for. The idea behind middleware is that you can execute any code similar to MCP servers at the point of like planning and applying. So you can build infra cost into the OpenTofu execution instead of running it outside. And I am missing one other project, but I can't remember what it was. Oh, Andre was doing some investigation into running providers remotely. And this was the idea of maybe your AWS provider sits inside your AWS account on a remote port, and you can point OpenTofu at that remote port instead of running all of your providers locally. This means that Tofu takes up a lot less memory. You can keep things close to home. If you want to, you can figure out federated auth. And so...
What protocol would that use?
I believe it was just using the gRPC, which the providers already use today. But it was providing a nice way for you to configure this within Tofu, and then providing a nice binary for you to go and download all of the providers within a certain account and listen on a port. So
I just want to make sure that it's in the collective brain space. TerraGrunt has a feature called Remote Engines, I think is what it's labeled, which is almost copy-paste the same concept, except instead of the other end of the phone call being the provider, the other end of the phone call is OpenTofu itself. And there's a gRPC interface for it. And so, TerraGrunt run all plan, and it invokes 100 OpenTofus. Maybe those OpenTofus are running in a Kubernetes cluster instead of on your local machine.
Yeah, so that's a little bit more akin to the remote execution of the cloud backend as well. Yeah. So maybe there's a future, and I'm sure Andre will be doing a write-up in remote execution in general. And
where will the write-ups for all these projects live? Is there like a dedicated place? Or are they just going to be RFCs?
Some of them might not get write-ups. Some of them, it depends. we didn't want people to feel like they have to go and produce an outcome at the end of this. Maybe just a demo or learning. I think there are some where people feel very passionate about it. I will feel very passionate about my hackathons stuff. Not the hackathon, middleware stuff. Christian and Martin are definitely going to be writing an RFC about ripping out the graph package. So what we will probably do is just put them up as normal RFCs. Is that right, Christian?
Yeah, I think so. For the ideas that are fledged enough for an RFC, but we should also do a blog post that's Zach has already conveniently written most of for us.
The fingers need the exercise.
Well, we've got a big bumper blog posting coming soon as well with the next release. Maybe we need to start spreading stuff out. But we've got the MCP server, we've got the VS Code extension. 110 just went into RC1. So yeah, big release post coming up soon. That wasn't on the agenda. I shouldn't have discussed that. But, well.
We can add agenda items, I think, once the existing agenda's been covered.
Yeah. Is there anything else on the existing agenda? Or does anyone have any questions about the hackathon stuff? No, I think the whole team in general, the maintainers all agree that we should do something like this a little bit more often. It definitely sparked a lot of great creative juices and we learned a lot of stuff and really got thinking out of the box.
I also got some feedback that it was nice to have permission to just take time and go explore the code base without having a particular bug or not timed, but like not a particular guaranteed result in mind. Just to like learn it for fun instead of for a particular task that might come with some pressure. Yeah, I agree. 1.11, we should talk about that as well.
Any closing thoughts on hackathon or the blog post? Going once, going twice. Okay, sorry, Christian, go ahead. 1.11.
Cool. So we have a 1.11. What's the word? It's pending. In progress. Like there's a word we've added to our milestone where we've started putting stuff to discuss. I believe we've assigned someone in the core team's last meeting to go through and see what other issues we might want to pull in from similar projects, just to take a look at public notes, documentation, that sort of thing. So we'll have that conversation internally, create some issues. We've already had some users asking for features or changes that were in similar projects as well. But we also have a couple interesting ideas for 1.11. And I'm sorry, I've been in meetings since early this morning. I'm tempted to go into this one with less of a explicit plan than we have in the past and just pull in the top issues and go from there. I know Ilya was excited to work on single resource instances. There's just I think there's a question of what a release should contain and how do we want to manage that. In the past, we've been fairly rigid about it, but that puts a lot of load on us, and we never really end up pulling in the exact set of issues we set aside. And it could also feel to the community that we're reserving them for the maintainers. So I don't know, James, do you have any thoughts on that? Have I missed anything terribly critical?
So I think one of the things we realized is that 110 is a massive release, especially when we were writing the blog posts. And massive releases are great for us, but it would be nicer to be able to do slightly smaller releases. I think what we would like to do is pick a flagship feature that's a little less defined, and we ship when that flagship feature is ready. And if the team is working on other RFCs or flagship features, that's great. But I think we still will end up with like a cadence of every few months. but it will avoid us saying, "Oh, just let's add one more thing, one more thing, one more thing," which is what happened with 1.10. So I'm not quite sure what that flagship feature is yet. I think we're all reviewing a lot of RFCs. Some RFCs are going to come out of the hackathon. So that's where we need to be a little less structured. Yeah. But we have identified some small to medium tasks that we want to be doing. I know personally, OpenTelemetry is going to get some improvements with forking a project around this, another package.
Is ephemeral values locked in for 1.11?
Yep, that feature branch is already in progress. Andre's been moving on that pretty quick.
About half to 3/4 done, right?
Yep.
So already it's not a small release, right? Yeah.
I think feedback from the market, from what I see, is I think too many releases would not actually be good. Banner headline, we still want people migrating from wherever they are today to OpenTofu, right? And so if we're on like 1.56, it's just confusing and hard to manage conceptually in your head. So the closer our version numbers mirror the project that shall not be named, and like have feature parity in that realm, I think it's easy for enterprises that are not paying close attention to what's actually happening to rock, right? I know if I go to OpenTofu 1.11, that'll be pretty similar and probably have the features of, Terraform 1.11, and that just like keeps people's minds simple. So being close-ish, I think, is helpful. And yeah, the banner headline feature thing is really important. It makes blog posts, LinkedIn posts, conversations with enterprises about everything. Did you know in 1.9 or 1.10 we did OCI? Those really good conversation anchors.
I do have. I'm sorry, I have a separate topic once we're done here about OCI.
So I want to make it clear, just to clarify on what I was saying. I'm not saying we should do lots of small releases. I'm saying our last release should probably be chunked into. So 2.5 to 3 month releases rather than a big 5 month, I think it has been release. I think 2 to 3 months is 3 or 4 a year, or 4 every quarter. That's not too bad.
Keeping in mind our deprecation policy, which is we support every release for 1 year. So if we do 4 a year, that means at any point in time we're supporting 4 releases. Or backporting fixes to 4 releases.
That's fine. OCI, Christian.
So I'm gonna ask you to spell out what it actually is, because there's a conversation happening here. Yeah, OCI, Oracle Cloud.
Oh, you want to talk Oracle Cloud?
Yeah.
See, we were all so confused.
No, I know this is why. So Terraform's latest release contained an Oracle Cloud storage backend. We have so far tried to not make any significant changes to the backends for a variety of reasons. And one of the reasons we want to get some of these other bigger items sorted out around workspaces is so we can, and other things, is so we can figure out some sort of alternate backend system like backends as plugins that means that OpenTofu is not the bottleneck here. But as soon as code goes into OpenTofu, we're committed to maintaining it. So the status of this is I reached out to the author reached out to me on our Slack, and I responded after talking with the TSC asking for information on what sort of long-term commitments Oracle would have about this if we were to add this backend, because we don't want this to be added and then have to create Oracle Cloud accounts for ourselves and maintain this large piece of infrastructure that is specifically for this Oracle integration. So we're stuck with our other existing backends. That's on us to maintain. But moving forward, we'd like to move to a better model. So we were, given that Terraform has merged this in some form, we were considering also accepting this if Oracle decided, if Oracle made a commitment to support this in our code base long term. So I have not gotten a response on that yet from that person, but they did submit a PR to us saying, hey, this is what got merged into Terraform. And it looks like they just copy pasted the PR with the Buzzle headers. So I asked them to please fix that. They have half fixed it. I'm still bothering them about that. But so far, this has been a little bit of a painful process, and I still don't have an answer on what Oracle would be willing to commit long-term for supporting us. So I don't know that there's an action item here, but I did want to bring it to the TSC's attention that this is an ongoing conversation that I've been having, and that it ties into some of the other conversations the TSC has had in the past. And also looking for some guidance and steering here for how we should be approaching this.
I need to drop it just to confirm. They've already submitted this into Terraform under the Bustle license.
That is correct, and that has been released. But because they are, as far as we're aware, they are the original authors, they are able to dual license it and submit it to us as well, as long as they're careful about it. It is the first time in my memory that a major feature has, I think there's been one performance improvement that was done in this fashion, where someone submitted the PR at the same time to both of us under its own respective licenses. But this is the first large piece of work that the author is trying to pull over. And it doesn't help that it's a contentious issue because of the fact that it's backends and requires maintenance and a bunch of other considerations. So I'll stop there and let other people talk.
Interestingly about this, Christian, I should mention, as a maintainer, and Ilya yourself as well, please do not read the code in that PR. Because the end user has not signed the DCO, we cannot confirm that none of the code is actually called BSL licensed, and we should not be reading that pull request. I will put out a message to the rest of the maintainers to avoid reading it as well.
Yep.
So is there an until or unless at the end of that sentence?
Until they sign the DCO.
Until they sign the
DCO.
Yeah.
Yep. 0.
But this has been going on since December. In fact, they contacted me and Kuba about this like a year ago. I don't think we're in any rush.
Yep. There's existing workarounds for Oracle using the S3 as in a compatible using the S3 compatible backend.
Did you want some action items to come out of the back of this one, Christian, or are you just making people aware?
Mostly making people aware, seeing if anyone has any strong feelings on how this should proceed here. Do we feel like because I explicitly asked for a guarantee from Oracle on having developer time dedicated OpenTofu to support this long term. Testing infrastructure, all of these things. Is that still something that we feel strongly about?
I have my 2 cents here. I'm not sure that we need to make this like necessary, but we need to clear that we need to be super clear that we are not maintainers of this code, and reroute all the issues, etc., to the Oracle team. And then the same as like in other open source software, like if maintainers just no longer maintain their code, we mark it as for deprecation, and then just removing it. Like it's not rocket science here. Like we're not new. Like not the first last project who has this item, and I think we can just adopt the same practices as been used across like multiple other projects. Because honestly, like you're asking them to guarantee something like from the company like Oracle, like I'm not sure that they can guarantee anything unless it goes through 9 circles of hell and bureaucracy and whatever contractual stuff, etc. People come and go there, like managers come and go. It's a large organization, so to get anything from them will be hard, to be honest.
It is something they have an incentive to do, though. Like this is important. To them.
Indeed,
So,
of course, but I'm not sure that like if they really care about it, it should be their business and their way how they can do this. I'm not sure that it's like our role to like force them or like back or whatever them to make it right. Because like if code will no longer be maintained or like no longer supported or like have some issues, it's like their reputation and it's their problem, not ours.
as soon as we merge it in, it's if we're not very clear about that, we are including Oracle's code as long as they maintain it. And if they stop maintaining it, then we remove it. If we end up in the position where we have to remove it, people are going to be pissed at us, regardless of if that's correct or not. They're going to be annoyed that we removed something that they.
I can see it, but again, like the goal, like I think the main like requirement here is to be absolutely clear everywhere, like documentation, release notes, like in a code that like we are not maintainers of this code. And again, like it's been done before. I mean, like half of the Linux kernel is like done this way, so.
You can see all the fun that causes. I'm okay with I'm okay following that if that's what we think. Saying that to get this merged, we need it to be absolutely clear that this is only going to exist within OpenTofu as long as Oracle is actively maintaining it, and when it's not, it will be removed. Yeah. Sorry. We've gone back and forth on that a lot, and I'd love for backends as plugins to happen sooner rather than later. But a lot of the conversations, especially with Martin Atkins, tend to devolve into, well, then what does the protocol look like? And if we're changing all these other things within the next year, do we put out a protocol that is effectively obsolete before it's even released? So that's kind of why I want to, we've been pushing for that working group above to talk about the higher level state storage workspaces and backends in OpenTofu. But unfortunately, I don't think that's a conversation that we're going to resolve in a reasonable time. We need to be making progress on that in order for OpenTofu to move forward. Don't get me wrong, but I think it's unfortunate. There is an option that we just put out something that is we could all again. This is part of the discussions we need to be having in the TSC is, do we wait for a consensus on what we think the future of OpenTofu's backends are, or do we expose what we have now and say this is implemented with the idea that it is a stopgap and allow people to tie it to that? So we release V1 and say, this is V1, we are actively working on V2, and it will be a different interface than all the and if this what you're writing now, well, it might be deprecated within the V2. Actually doing pluggable backends technically is not terribly hard. It's more so what is the API? How do we support it long term? How do we version?
What is the immediate tangible user value for backends as plugins? And the motivation for my question is I understand the technical motivation for it. It's clear as day. But when we have, some of these hackathon projects seem like really meaningful UX improvements that will actually change the way people use OpenTofu. Whereas this feels like backends work today, not ideal, but they work.
I think some of the biggest ones are that right now I'm just going to pick on Azure because we don't have a lot of Azure experts on the core team. keeping that maintained and up to date is something that's very hard. And if you are a company that's using newer auth features in Azure, they will likely not work in OpenTofu. So if I'm a large company or even a small company and I have specific requirements on a state storage backend, that might not, OpenTofu as it exists today, might not be fast enough. It might not put the features out in the way that I need it to. Or maybe I'm using a really old API and it breaks. Maybe I'm using some old compatibility layer that just happens to work with an old with the S3 implementation right now. If we upgrade our SDK, our AWS S3 SDK, maybe that doesn't work anymore, and now they're stuck on an old OpenTofu version. The understanding of what state storage is doesn't change that often, and as the user story is, I want to be either able to run an older version of an existing backend, or I want to be able to bring my own backend that is specific to my particular use case. And the last time I presented this to the TSC, there's already a community built up around the HTTP backend. It's a very unfortunate solution and requires some, it's just not ergonomic, but people are already working around this issue today. But if this was a first-class thing, I think it would solve a lot of problems for a lot of users who are either like silently suffering or just kind of grumbling that the HTTP backend doesn't quite work, or it's, yeah. Sure. Yeah, so it sounds like the future of the backend we're going to face this influx. The future Oracle-based backend doesn't feel like a sure thing either. That's true. Yeah, it is in our hands. So we could, honestly, engineering time for this, I don't think would be a crazy amount, given what it is. The bigger work is defining the interface for V1. If we were to go that way and say this is what's supported, this is what's not, and this is what we think is good. This is when we think it might change.
Okay.
Zach, I should have gone to you, Zach. Did you have any questions on my response to what value this would bring to you?
No, I understand the answer. If I could, my contextualized response is it's indirect value for most users. For some users, it'll be, if Azure's broken, that's a direct problem. But for others, it's, general maintainability, performance, bugs, etc. It's not like there's some key capability that is unlocked on day one.
That's correct.
Cool. And with that, we are out of agenda items. Would anybody else like to add anything ad hoc? Do we have like a formal closing procedure? Do we ring a bell?
I actually wanted to just going back to backends as plugins. I wanted to just not to make an actual vote or decision. I just want to get a feeling from the TSC members present. What are your thoughts on the two options? One is we refine this properly. We go through the steps of figuring out what the future of this is going to look like for the next 10 years and define that interface, update OpenTofu internally, and then we build an external plugin for it, or an external pluggable interface, or we build something that is a compromise. We make it very clear that it's a compromise, but it's something that people will likely still benefit from today. We've gone back and forth on this a fair bit. But I just want to get it like a gut check from what you're thinking.
James first, then Igor.
Sorry, Igor, I beat you to it. We're not HashiCorp. We do not have a super tight relationship with AWS or Azure or anything like this. And I think the only way that we can make it work is if we get someone else to do the maintenance of those backend plugins. And let's be realistic. If we were to go and implement backends as plugins, all we're doing is maintaining those backend plugins ourselves as well now. I don't think anybody else wants to write a different backend plugin at all. I think everyone's just happy with it. And I think also it's the idea of going, oh, we should have backends as plugins is great. until we start talking about redesigning it and maybe using something like a SQLite database or something else. You can maybe just genericize it in a different way. But I agree there's tech debt to be paid off. I just don't see value for end users, and I don't see value for developers. Igor?
You pretty much said what I wanted to say. It's like very hard to add something else. It's like one thing is like when you're saying like a stopgap or like intermediate solution, will be like we move there and that's it, or this compromise solution, or it's like some middle ground and then we still want to go to like where we want to go. The reason why I'm asking is the whole like migrations, maintenance, rewriting those modules, like if there's somebody else will maintain them, it will be a nightmare. So like if we want somebody else to maintain those like backends, then it should be like pretty much one go. This is our interface, like some BC promises, etc. And now people can go right and it will work for the next 10 years. But then like if people like, hey, there's a new version of OpenTofu like 1.15, hey, by the way, all your backends will stop working, so you need to do some job there. Like it will be a nightmare.
I think it's less than sorry.
And I also concur with James, like on a high level, like there's like looking at all the other stuff that we can do that can provide like real benefit, like the whole like go from 14 minutes to 13 seconds on execution. Like this would be like a much higher on a priority list of things to do versus like pluggable backends. And also let's be like let's be just clear and honest, like there's not that many backends that people are using. Like I would say like 80-90% of users would use what, like AWS, Google, Azure, and some tacos using like remote backend / cloud backend, HashiCorp backend. That's pretty much it. The rest is like very rarely used niche things that like most of the users will never benefit from.
Agree with James Newell.
Okay. I will mention that one of the bigger names that has endorsed, one of the big names who has said they are using OpenTofu and spoke at OpenTofu Day, Fidelity, they run their own custom HTTP backend and hate it. So just pointing it out that like we do have some large people who are using OpenTofu and are bothered by this today in a significant way. One of the things I worry about is that the folk that specifically James and Igor, I think from your perspective in tacos, that when you're in a taco, it doesn't matter as much, but when you're building your own solution, I think it might matter a little bit more. This isn't accusing you of anything other than just having expertise in a given area. But
I don't know much about Fidelity, but I would very much curious to know like what was the fundamental reasons for them to use a HTTP backend and build their own backend, because there's a very high likelihood that the problem that they're trying to solve can be solved in a different way, and this is just a like workaround which became like a permanent solution.
we could try and reach out. James, I assume we still have their conference information from.
Yeah, I have to drop. I have a phone call. Take care, everybody.
Yep.
Thank you. Bye.
James. Okay. So I guess the action item out of this is I can reach out to the guy at Fidelity who gave the talk at OpenTofu Day and try and get some more information on why exactly the backend system right now doesn't. When I mentioned backends as plugins, his eyes lit up and were like, oh, this is something you might do. This would make my life a million times easier. So I think it's not a sexy user feature that is going to make everyone's life immediately better, but it is going to make I think if we do something like this, it will make a critical impact. This is what I've been saying for the past year. It'll make a critical impact on.
My only concern is like by implementing this will like give users iPhone to like put nails in the wall. Like I want to like understand like what's the actual reason behind this, why they cannot use like other backend before we'll like because yeah, it is a solution and like in theory it could be great for all attackers, etc. But again, like so far I don't see any fundamental problem that it can solve, other than like maybe make workarounds a little bit easier.
Yeah. I mean, it does solve the Oracle problem where we say, well, just ship a plugin, maintain it yourself, have that means the users are talking directly to them.
I mean, but for me, the North Star is still make OpenTofu a compelling reason for enterprises to switch from Terraform. And this seems of the like, even just today, the 10 things we've talked about that we could put developer resources into, like the bottom of that list.
Okay.
I agree.
That's fair.
Yes, make Fidelity.
That would be interesting.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, I think our meeting is officially closed. I have a request. Does anybody have the ability to stop the recording? Other than just like ending the meeting?
One moment.